Ted Seay served in the US mission to NATO, joins us now. Ted Seay, a very warm welcome to you. There's a feeling, isn't there, at the moment that NATO is not asserting itself on the question of Ukraine in particular. What can it do?
I think its options are frankly very limited. I think there are many reasonable uses of force that can be threatened at this point. It doesn't seem that talking's doing much good. So I think NATO's painted itself in a bit of a corner in Ukraine.
We have a situation today where you could argue that Barack Obama will be in the Baltic republics, formerly part of under the maw of the Soviet Empire. It's symbolic, but actually what really matters in all this is practical measures, practical sanctions. And we can't even get the French to stop the sale of two high-tech amphibious vessels to the Russians right now. How can the Russians possibly take the West seriously?
Well, self-interest has always entered into international diplomacy and international relations. That will never change, and we should try and factor that in.
In terms of the Ukraine right now, within the past hour and a half, we've had news from Petro Poroshenko's office suggesting that a peace deal with the Russians or their proxies in the east of the country is underway. I suppose it depends how cynical you are, but it does seem quite coincidental, doesn't it, Ted, that on the eve of this summit in Wales, we get a breakthrough.
Listen, NATO summits are important. And if we look back to March of 2008, when the summit was held in Bucharest, there was a decision made by NATO's allies to promise, not suggest or hint, but promise that both Georgia and Ukraine would eventually become NATO allies. And I think we've seen how that policy has turned out.
Did we overreach? Did the West overreach in thinking that Russia would ever be relaxed about countries on its very doorstep being aligned with NATO?
I don't think there could have been any clearer indication to the Russians that we were simply ignoring their most basic strategic concerns. And that can't be good for negotiations down the line. And I think we're reaping what we sowed back in March of 2008 in a sense.
The other thing we may be reaping in terms of what we haven't sown, and President Obama is likely to raise this, is the question of funding. Consistently, the Americans have said, look, our European military allies simply have to step up to the plate in terms of the percentage of their annual budgets they spend on defence, and it's not enough.
That's been a basic tenet of NATO for a long time now, is that allies ought to be putting 2% of their GDP aside for defence. And there are very few allies that have been bothering to do that.
Actually, Ted, we were both being slightly cynical a while ago, but there's a development in the line I was telling you about apropos Petro Poroshenko, the president of Ukraine, saying a peace deal had been agreed with the Russians. Just reading here, even more confusingly, the Reuters news agency are saying a Putin spokesman says Putin and Poroshenko did not agree on a ceasefire because Russia is not a party to the Ukraine conflict. They're reminding us all, the Russians, that they see this as something that their proxies or simply pro-Russian separatists are doing in the east, which the global community says is nonsense, Ted.
Well, of course it's nonsense, but they're taking unconventional measures because there's no reason for them to try and stand up to a conventional confrontation, one that they know they can't win, in purely conventional military terms. So why should they play that game?
Ted Seay served in the US mission to NATO, joining us there from central London. Ted, thanks very much indeed.
Thank you.